Hello and welcome to the Cook Memorial Public Library Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Goss. Today, our local history librarian, Jenny Berry, returns with another local history segment we're calling Runaway Animals in Libertyville. Jenny, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Nate. Glad to be back.
It's great to have you. These are always really well-received podcast episodes, these local history segments. We love doing them. But are we really talking about the history of animals run amok in Libertyville? I mean, you pitched this to me as a podcast idea, so you've got enough material for this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a podcast. It's not like a thesis, so it's not tons of material. But over the years, myself and other librarians have come across newspaper articles that kind of strike our fancy. And there's been one sitting in my file for some time from one of our former librarians. And I was really trying to figure out how to use it in a podcast. And I think bringing it together with other escaped animals is the way to go. Yeah,
that sounds adventurous. So, all right, well, then let's dive in. Let's talk about some of these articles that you found about animals running wild in Libertyville.
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to talk about first a couple of early 1900s examples of fairly standard animals that would have been around in the day. So this first one is from November 25th of 1910. There were some Waukegan residents who were passing through town. They were heading back to Waukegan after purchasing 3 pigs from a local stock farm. Their horse became, quote, unruly and ran the wagon into a ditch, which tipped the wagon and then, quote, making a heterogeneous mixture of men and pigs on the ground. I could just imagine pigs and men crawling all over each other.
That just sounds like something out of a horror movie, like a heterogeneous mix of men and pigs.
A pig head,
it's a
man arms.
Great journalistic flair there.
It is. And then the article continued. The pigs were rounded up and they were penned up in the Central Park bandstand. Central Park today is known as Sunrise Rotary Park. It's the park between St. Joseph Church right next to it. But what really got me was the quote from this article that I wanted to read. It said, "The horse was caught before it had run very far. The pigs were corralled and penned up in the bandstand in the park, where they made music of a quality unapproached by any brass band, and the men made tracks for home." I'm just imagining the noise that these pigs are making. They are not happy.
Yeah.
They're penned up in the bandstand.
I might have paid to see that.
Yes, exactly.
But I mean, so I'm just trying to picture this park. Would there have been like neighbors around to kind of be like, what is going on out there? What is this, mixture of
Oh, yeah. So this is 1910. So St. Joseph's Church was already there, not the church that's building that's there today, but a former church. And where the church building is today, there were several houses along Maple Avenue, and there were definitely houses on Park Place as well as Broadway, which is on the other side. So definitely there would have been people hearing the commotion.
All right, so some horses and pigs. What other stories we got here?
I just want to bring in one more horse story. This is a little earlier. It's from August 24th, 1906. And again, it's because of the image that the article kind of brings to mind. So there was a team of horses that were parked outside of H.B. Egger's hardware store. That's where the Townie restaurant is today on North Milwaukee Avenue.
Same building and everything.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And the horses started to run. They collided with a young woman who was driving a smaller wagon, and she was thrown from the seat, and she was okay. So the story has a pretty happy ending, yeah. What really gets me, though, is that the article goes on to say that one of the runaway horses ended up in the wagon of the young woman, so in the wagon, and was drawn by the other 2 horses all the way south to the electric railway depot just south of Park Avenue before being stopped. So that's about a half a mile. The empty parking lot next to the Libertyville Animal Hospital today is where that train station was. So now, again, I'm picturing Looney Tunes, other early cartoons with this flailing horse in a wagon being drawn along. I mean, ultimately, the wagon had to be tipped over to get the horse out. Again, the horses were fine. All the people were fine. So nobody was hurt.
Happy ending here.
Happy ending. Just an amazing visual.
I'm just imagining this horse has had enough. And it's like, now it's time for these horses to drag me around for a little bit.
I'm going to hop in the wagon and go.
Hey, this wagon spot ain't so bad.
Either that in it or a terrified horse. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, that's probably more what it was. Just this horse that's like, what's going on?
I'm not supposed to be in this wagon.
So we've got some horses and pigs. These are like farm animals. That seems pretty typical for this area, especially especially around that time. What other animals do we have in store?
All right. Well, we're moving a little more exotic animals now. So now we're looking at 1950. This is November 1950. And the headline was, "Where's Cuneo's bear? Experts puzzle over missing 6-month-old." So a 6-month-old black bear had escaped from the Cuneo farm. That's today where Cuneo Museum is, the pink house down on South Milwaukee Avenue. So this was a bear about the size of a Cocker Spaniel, so not huge. It was seen near Butler Lake the next day, but it had not been found by the time the paper went to press the following week. I went to Google Maps, and it told me that that's about 4 miles by road today. So assuming that the bear didn't actually go down Milwaukee Avenue. It traveled quite some distance within that time.
So why was there a bear there to begin with?
Right. So at that time, the land was owned by John Cuneo, and he had the Hawthorne Melody Dairy Farm there, which had kids come out from the city and go to the dairy farm. By 1949, he had put in this state-of-the-art milking parlor where you could come and see the cows being milked. This was just about the time that he was putting together, along with his son, John Cuneo Jr., a zoo. So they had the bears, and at the time the bears got out, they had some raccoons, ferrets, and weasels. By the time they opened, they had a baby elephant and quite an array of smaller animals. Yep. When the bear escaped, this was November of 1950. The zoo opened up in June 30th, 1951.
Okay.
So they were putting that zoo together at that time. We do have a file on Hawthorne Melody Farm here in the library, the local history files in the lower level. So if someone wants to come in and learn a little bit more about that.
Well, that's a whole aspect of that place I never even knew about. That there was this zoo there. I didn't know that.
The zoo closed actually in 1970. When I was growing up, they still had white deer there. So if you were driving along Milwaukee Avenue, you could see the white deer right off the road. So that's a whole nother story. There's lots of stuff out on the internet about that as well. So if you want to see pictures, you can definitely...
The bear escape?
No, about the Hawthorne Melody Farm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
But sorry, back to the bear escaping.
Yeah.
So the bear escaped. It got to Butler Lake. And then bear experts speculated that the bear had either been shot or was holed up somewhere for the winter. But in the next week's paper, happy ending, Cuneo bear home again, read the headline. It was found the following Thursday. It only just short of a week on the lam. It was spotted in a tree on the Vincent Baldwin property by Priscilla, Mary, and Dickie Baldwin. Now, the sisters saw the bear in the pine tree, and the 6-year-old Dickie ran inside to get his toy shotgun so he could, quote, cover the bear. The bear wouldn't escape.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the microfilm of our newspaper is scratched right at the part where it's talking about how they actually captured him. So I don't have any details on that.
Use your imagination to fill in the details.
So the bear was captured and returned to the zoo, and happy ending.
All was happy. All was well.
Yeah. So one last story from about that same time period. So on the day that the paper was published and the Cuneo bear was home again, there was another escaped animal story on the same front page.
What?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yes, I know, exactly. Now, this is a little smaller animal. It was Gigi the parakeet.
Okay.
And the headline was, Gigi the parakeet explores village, has no comment yet. So
that's clever.
Yeah, the owner, Mrs. Muckle, had the parakeet on her shoulder. She went to the front door to get the newspaper. She opened up the door, and Gigi flew out the door. And the family searched the neighborhood for an hour. They lived on Jackson Avenue, which is the street that runs just behind where the Brainerd Athletic Field is today. They searched it for an hour, but it was Sunday and it was time to go to church, so they had to give up the search. But then when they were in Sunday school at the Presbyterian Church, which is right pretty much across the street, Mrs. Muckle turned and saw the parakeet on a tree just outside the church window. And after a short chase and the procurement of a ladder, Gigi was apprehended and she was returned to her cage. So again, happy ending.
All right, good, happy ending.
So the last one I wanted to bring out is the one that actually I've been waiting to tell for a very long time.
All right, let's hear it.
It's a bigger bird story. So the headline in the Independent Register on May 11th, 1961 was "Chickens Come Big This Year." Okay, this is pretty big. Juliet, a 7-foot-tall, 500-pound ostrich, was on the loose in Lake County.
Wow. All right. I'm picturing this now. All right.
Again, that is a big chicken. Another Looney Tunes cartoon in the making. Juliet had escaped from a pen at an appearance in Mount Prospect at the Oasis Drive-In Theater the previous Saturday night. Now, Juliet wasn't just any ostrich. She was a professional ostrich who had appeared on TV and in the movies. A celebrity ostrich. Yes. I don't know what she appeared in. I don't know if there's an IMDb profile for Juliet, but
we'll have to
check that later. She was, however, hard to capture because ostriches are quite speedy.
They're known for that.
Yeah. The articles talked about it being faster than a racehorse. The Smithsonian National Zoo website says the ostriches run about 30 to 37 miles per hour, but can hit 43 miles per hour when sprinting.
Wow.
So their plan to capture the ostrich was to lasso it from a plane. But an aerial search had been unsuccessful. And I don't know if she was ever captured. So the last article I could find was about a month later. She was still missing as of June 13th. So, we hope for all the best for Juliet, but I don't know what actually happened.
We don't know. No. And if we look maybe on IMDb, there would be, it's just she's still missing.
Juliet.
Yeah. Wow. What a zany story. I mean, the ostrich is weird enough, but then the best idea they can come up with was let's just get a plane and we'll lasso it down from a plane.
I have no idea. It was fast, I guess. And what happens when you actually lasso the ostrich?
I know.
I hope it stops.
Right.
I don't know. So, so these are some historical examples, but I mean, it was also kind of, besides the fact that I've always wanted to get this ostrich story out there.
Yeah.
I've recently seen articles about roaming pigs in like Wayne, Illinois, which is near St. Charles, that were recently, like August.
This still happens.
Yeah. And some of our listeners might be aware that there was a bison, a 1,300-pound bison, loose in like the Wakanda area for about 8 months.
Yeah.
And finally captured this past May in Lakewood Forest Preserve. So
That's right. Yeah.
These are historical examples, but it still happens.
It's like there's a fine tradition of weird animals running loose in the suburbs of Chicago.
Exactly.
And Libertyville has a role to play in
We
that.
sure do. Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, Jenny, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, some great articles that you pulled up here. Now, I do want to mention, like, all this stuff that you uncovered, that you dug up, it was all in our collection here at the library, right? Like so if anybody wanted to kind of do some researching of their own of this topic or some other zany topic, what can someone do to take advantage of the same resources you used?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, some of the articles, like the Cuneo articles, we had come across on our microfilm just when looking for other things, and they were filed in our local history files. But otherwise, if you go to our local history page, you can search our newspapers in multiple ways. You can search them through the microfilm that we've digitized through 1926. And also for about the last year, maybe not quite a year, we've had a subscription through the library to newspapers.com that also has the local newspapers in it and has a really good keyword searching function. And it also has newspapers from across the country. So you're not limited to escaped animals in the Libertyville area. You can look for escaped animals anywhere, all over the place. Yeah. So I would recommend those.
And that one's available from home, right? Like
it is.
You wouldn't have to come to the library to use
Both
that.
of them are available from home. Yeah. So either our digitized local newspapers or newspapers.com.
Right. Yeah. All right. So lots of great resources at our patrons' fingertips. So thank you so much, Jenny. We'll have to do this again sometime. Maybe when we have another collection of animals that run loose around here.
You're welcome. And I say, if anybody comes across any other crazy animal stories, historical, send them my way.
All right. Can do. All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, so to find any of those resources that Jenny mentioned, you're going to want to head over to our website. That website is www.cooklib.org. While you're on that website, make sure to swing on by our blog, Shelf Life, where many of our staff and librarians regularly share book reviews, genealogy tips, other local history stories, and so much more. That blog can be found at shelflife.cooklib.org. And we want to invite you to talk to us anytime. Give us some feedback on the podcast. Send any questions or comments about the podcast to us on Twitter at Cook Library, or you can send us an email at webmaster@cooklib.org. And if you enjoy this episode, please tell others about it and let them know that they can listen to this episode along with any past or future episodes of the Cook Memorial Public Library podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever they like to get their podcasts. This episode of the Cook Memorial Public Library podcast was recorded in Digital Studio 1 at the Cook Park Library in downtown Libertyville. Visit the Digital Studio page on the library's website to learn more about how you can use the studio spaces at either of our libraries. We will be back soon, but until then, keep reading, keep watching, and keep listening.